I don't know much about this, but apparently it's a new report that came out of PBS NewsHour about the final year of the Trump administration, essentially how close we came to, like, coups and sieges in Donald Trump's final year in office. Frankly, I think we all need to appreciate a little bit more how close we came to real disaster, you know? Good night, Matt Brett. I want to live in Finland. Finland seems like a nice place.
President Trump's last year in office was bookended by impeachment trials, and in between, marked by other historic events, a deadly pandemic, the economic collapse, racial unrest across the country, and a violent insurrection at the U.S. Capitol. And in their new book, I Alone Can Fix It, Donald J. Trump's catastrophic final year, Washington Post reporters Carol Leonnig and Philip Rucker reveal new details about the chaos inside the Trump White House and the alarm that rippled across the government during that time. Carol and Phil's book is out today, and they join me now, and it's very good to have both of you with us. Congratulations on the book that's getting a lot of attention. You already do this remarkable reporting in your day job, and that comes through in this book. But Carol, let me start by asking you, what was President Trump's bottom line in this final year in office? What mattered more to him than anything?
You know, his public image and getting reelected, maintaining his grip on power, Judy, was numero uno.
True Salazar biscuit. But most places aren't good on trans rights either. But I suppose if I was gonna go someplace based on, like, trans rights and, like, being generally cool, I'd go to New Zealand. New Zealand seems like a nice place.
No, in everything he did. And one of the takeaways, you know, Phil and I reported this in real time, but when we did that deeper excavation, the big takeaway was how disturbed and unsettled insiders in the Trump administration were about the degree to which the president was willing to put American lives and democracy in danger, again, for his primary goal, staying president.
And these were people, Phil, who were close to the president, working for the president, still having these concerns. But one of the early examples that struck me was at the very beginning of the COVID crisis, when they were discussing whether to bring Americans home from China. And the president said no. Why not?
You know, the president, these, by the way, were not only Americans, but they were government workers, American public servants who were doing their jobs overseas in China. The president did not want them brought home because they could be infected and it would increase the numbers of infections in the United States. And he didn't think of that as just a simple fact. He told his advisors it was his number. My number would go up. And he said, no, we can't bring them back here. He thought about quarantining them somewhere off-site so that they wouldn't be counted towards that statistic. And it took interventions on behalf of the senior government officials in the cabinet, rather, to make that happen.
And it was that kind of thinking that you document persisted throughout the COVID period last year.
That's exactly right. It was for Trump all about his numbers, his political fortunes, and his chances for re-election on November 3rd. That was paramount for him, even as the U.S. faced this deadly pandemic and a genuine crisis.
So many things to ask you all about. I wish we had longer, but Carol, one of the most striking things is the reporting around last summer and fall. You had three senior figures in the Trump administration: the Attorney General, the Secretary of Defense, and then the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, spending a lot of energy, and I'm quoting you, keeping Trump from deploying active duty troops on the streets of American cities in reaction to the protests around race. This is after the death of George Floyd. But
again, y'all, Trump wanted to turn the United States into a police state. Trump wanted to embrace authoritarian power. We are just lucky that our decrepit, aged democratic institutions and whatever remains of that instilled within our military at the very top prevented us from actually succumbing to that. And we came so close. So close. I mean, they deployed, like, quasi-military, National Guard. But, like, we didn't see, like, the actual army being deployed. Guns drawn, shooting protesters. Donald Trump wanted the military to shoot these blacks dead. That's what he wanted. He's an incredibly racist person. He has been the entire time. And it is a miracle, to be completely honest with you, that, like, a bunch of people protesting on behalf of civil rights wouldn't be gunned down by him. The lady in the white top is good looking. She is.
But also how they were worried that he could use troops to, in your words, perpetuate his power by somehow intervening in the election.
Yeah. No. Like, again, if Donald Trump could get away with it, if Donald Trump, instead of just being like, yo, I want some, I want people who look like they know what they're doing, if instead Donald Trump was just like, nah, get out, Jared, you're in charge of the military now, we would absolutely still be living in Trump's America, okay? Jared Kushner just comes in, yeah, orders the military to occupy Congress. Like, yo, you think Jared Kushner's gonna say no to that? You think Ivanka Trump's gonna say no to her dad? Nah. Luckily, U.S. military is loyal to the country over the president. I mean, either way you cut it, if you had somebody in charge of the military who told them to do it, there would be some kind of extremely bloody conflict within the ranks of the military and within the general population. Like, what we're looking at is, like, some Civil War era shit going down.
That's right. From our reporting, Judy, the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff believed that this was a Reichstag moment. You know, essentially compared president's moves to Hitler's efforts to consolidate power, believed that he was trying to create chaos and disturbance and fear, basically to hold on to power, and was worried about this coup. The three people you mentioned were banded together to stop that. And banded...
You know, it's interesting that she brings up that Donald Trump viewed this as his Reichstag moment, because there's long been a lot of accounts of, like, Donald Trump holding Hitler in high regard, of holding Mein Kampf in particular in high regard. In fact, early on in his run for the presidency in 2015 and 2016, people were reporting that he has talked about how the only speeches he's ever read have been Hitler's, and that he keeps a copy of Mein Kampf by his bed. And that is something, by the way, that hasn't gone away. In fact, if we look this up, Trump praised Hitler to Chief of Staff John Kelly during Europe trip, new book claims. This isn't like from a tabloid rag, this is from NBC. And this is also from the book. Let's see. Oh, this is the quote. Well, Hitler did a lot of good things, Trump told Kelly during a 2018 visit to Europe to commemorate the 100th anniversary of the end of World War I. God damn. It's from the book, according to Michael Bender. Michael Bender's book, Frankly, We Did Win This Election. That is where the quote comes from. Hitler killed Hitler. True, that is a good thing that Hitler did. So when we're talking about this, keep in mind that Trump has that in the back of his head too. Like, Trump knows what a strongman authoritarian is supposed to do. He's just baffled by the fact that people didn't do it when he was president. And if he gets into office again, he's not going to make the same mistakes he made last time. he's going to appoint stooges who are going to say yes no matter what he says. And that's when we're all fucked. Like, to be real with you guys, that's when we're all fucked. That's when people start going to camps. That's when people start being lined up at the wall. And that's when people start dying. And so, whatever happens, we have to make sure that we are doing everything in our power over the next couple years to make sure that any second presidential run, or third, I guess, presidential run by Donald Trump does not succeed.
Together to keep a Waco from happening in an American city. They did not.
wait. Hitler killed Hitler. It can't be all bad if you killed Hitler. Yeah, but he also killed the guy who killed Hitler.
Want U.S. troops deployed on people exercising their First Amendment rights to protest the death of George Floyd, to protest systemic racism, and they would meet together privately before going into.
Also, this is kind of what I mean a little bit about some. We need more fire and fury about these topics. This lady's just very calmly and matter-of-factly talking about how Donald Trump wanted to use the powers of his office to stage an authoritarian military coup in the United States. And instead of being upset about it, she's just like, yeah, you know, Donald Trump wanted to use his powers this way, but couldn't, and that's a pretty good thing, isn't it? But like, nah, get mad, yell. We should be furious that this even came close to the realm of possibility of happening. I don't know, Michael Keyes, every time travel movie has taught me that traveling back in time to do shit like that is gonna, like, blink you out of existence. I don't want to do that. I'm sorry, I'm biased to wanting to be alive. There isn't that much yelling on NewsHour. I know there's not much yelling, but, like, people need to be more mad about this and more worked up.
To the Oval,
maybe there should be.
To basically, you know, compare notes and figure out a plan to stop Donald Trump in his tracks.
Of course, none of this was public. I mean, there were rumors, but none of it was clearly public at the time. And then, Phil, you have, you know, fast forwarding in the days after the election in November, the president seriously thinking at that point about firing his Secretary of Defense. He was also thinking about firing the chair of the Joint Chiefs, General Milley. But you write in the book about how the military leadership, the Joint Chiefs, came up with a plan to make sure, frankly, that the country held together. Talk about what they did.
Tinfern, that's just an added bonus. Okay. Yeah, this is so calm it could be ASMR, and he's talking about the plan that the Joint Chiefs had to cook up in a back room to make sure that Trump didn't seize authoritarian dictatorship in the United States.
Chairman Milley, but not just him, the other Joint Chiefs, the heads of the Army, the Navy, the Air Force, all of the branches of our military were across the river at the Pentagon in fear of what this president might do in those harrowing few months between the election and Joe Biden's inauguration. They saw in public him talking about discrediting the election, claiming it was stolen, even though there was no evidence to support that. They knew he was thinking about maybe launching a war in Iran. He seemed increasingly unhinged, and they were worried about a coup attempt. And they banded together and they thought, you know what, if the president were to give us an order as commander-in-chief to do something they thought was unconstitutional or illegal or unethical in any way, that they would resign one by one to try to delay taking that action and basically form a guardrail against the president's dangerous impulses.
How eager were they to talk about this, Carol?
You know, we are pretty rigorous reporters, and we interviewed more than 140 people that were insiders, frontline. There were many people in real time when we were reporting for the public, for the Washington Post, who would not talk to us. They were afraid of Donald Trump, and some of them were afraid of coming forward for fear that they'd be replaced by even a worse yes man or yes woman. And we found, Phil and I, when we went back to interview people, they were more willing basically to educate the public, and their fear had fallen off. They were also worried these aren't just, you know, history in the rear view. This is current events. This is a Donald Trump who is intimating that he will run in 2024. We'll see if that's true, but people wanted it to be known what he actually did behind the scenes.
I think it's really important, Phil, to illuminate, to remind people what the president was doing on January the 6th when this mob was overrunning the Capitol. What he was doing, he wasn't going to the Situation Room in the White House. What was he doing, and how hard were people trying to reach him who he said he didn't want to talk to?
Judy, it's chilling. The U.S. Capitol was under siege. There were violent rioters at the Capitol calling for the vice president's head, chasing after lawmakers. And the president, President Trump, according to our reporting, was in the private dining room off the Oval Office watching television. He was AWOL when it came to his responsibilities as the president and the commander-in-chief. He was not communicating to leaders at the Pentagon. He was not involved in orchestrating any sort of law enforcement or military response to protect the Capitol. He was watching it on television. People, advisors outside, were trying to call him to get through to him. Chris Christie was one of them, to try to tell him he needs to tell his supporters to stand down, to go home, to stay peaceful. He wouldn't take the calls. We heard in our reporting that Ivanka Trump, his daughter, who had been in her office upstairs on the second floor, had to come into that dining room multiple times, one time after another, to try to get her father to finally put out a statement to his supporters, which he did in that video, but it took 2 hours and lives were lost.
And he resisted, was resisting.
He did.
Absolutely, multiple times. For hours, they were working on this without
chat.
success.
If you,
that hurt.
you think about this, and
Hurt my
people think,
body.
yes, all this happened, and yet there's still 74 million people who voted for him, and a lot of them are still supporting him. Carol, you've covered this city.
Look, I don't think we need an Alex Jones of the left. We just need somebody who gets mad. We need to get more angry people on the left. And that doesn't mean we need Jimmy Dore. We need someone like Jimmy Dore who's not like a grifter and a shill. We need someone who's willing to yell and get angry and call out bullshit. Yeah, fuck Jimmy Dore. I agree. Fun fact. Here, we'll finish this and I'll give you some Jimmy Dore content.
How do you explain the fact that after all the things that have been reported about what Donald Trump did, that, I mean, many politicians would just go hide under a rock and never want to be seen in public again?
Donald Trump struck a chord. You know, in our first book, Judy, A Very Stable Genius, we talked about the one thing that Donald Trump was truly a genius at, and that was his mastery of the megaphone, his ability to tap into people who feel elitists have dismissed them, people who feel disenfranchised, people who feel like the economic winds are blowing against them and that they are looked down upon. This group, including some white supremacists and nationalists, they really love Donald Trump. And now you have a band of Republicans who want that Donald Trump voter desperately so they can stay in office. So they continue to repeat the lies that Donald Trump promulgated.
And just quickly, Phil, I mean, you had
I
people
am,
who
because I
wanted
forgot
to
to
talk
tweet
you,
out
wanted to get the
to
story out, but there were
Instagram
many
out
others who
that
were
I'm
sticking
doing
with
this.
it.
There are many others who are sticking with him, but you know, Donald Trump also wanted to get his story out. We sat down with him for 2.5 hours at Mar-a-Lago for an interview for this book, and look, people are sticking with him. Tens of millions of Americans support him to this day and believe the lies that he says about the election, which is one of the reasons why the threat to democracy is not yet extinguished. This is very real and continuing.
Very real, very real. Phil Rucker, Carol Leonnig, we thank you both. It's quite a book. It is I Alone Can Fix It, Donald J. Trump's Catastrophic Final Year. Thank you both.
Thank you so much,
Judy.
Appreciate it.
Riverboat Jack.